Hi all, I'm Cathy McIsaac. I'm the dietitian that works with pulmonary rehab, and I'm just going to present some information to you about the role of diet and nutrition in your pulmonary rehab program. So Julia has me come and talk to you guys because nutrition is an important part of your rehab and treatment program. The food that you're eating is providing the building blocks for the strength and energy that you're gaining during the program. And just as kind of a baseline, folks with pulmonary disease, their breathing requires more energy than folks without pulmonary disease. So it's important that you keep those good energy sources coming. And good nutrition can also help reduce the likelihood of acute illnesses and infections and hospitalizations. And really the best way to get all the nutrients that you need is to eat a good variety in your diet to get all those nutrients that are required. So we'll go through that, and you'll find this information as well in the handout that Julia has provided. So first off, when you're choosing those carbohydrate foods, you definitely want to include more whole grains and whole grain breads and pastas, lots of fresh fruits and veggies. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to choose more of the fruit and veggies over the breads and pastas and that type of thing, just to get fewer calories and a bigger portion. But if you're trying to gain weight, also including those whole grain breads and pastas are a good way to get those extra calories with getting good nutrients as well. One of the reasons we do focus on fruits and veggies and whole grains is to make sure folks are getting enough fiber. And we want to aim to get about 20 to 30 grams of fiber each day, again from mainly those breads and pastas, nuts and seeds, and fruits and veggies. And so protein as well is another thing that is very important. That protein that you're eating is providing the building blocks to build up that new muscle or regain that muscle that you're aiming for in the rehab program. So you want to include a good source of protein in at least 2 meals a day, and actually 3 meals would be even better. And these can include things like milk and eggs, cheese, meats, poultry, nuts and dry beans or legumes. And again, trying to have protein at all your meals can be helpful, and especially it seems that protein, including protein at breakfast, which for some folks may not be part of their routine. If you just have toast and butter and a piece of fruit, that's a pretty low protein meal. So trying to add some protein at breakfast, again, will give you some of that the protein that you need while you're doing your exercises later in the day to build up that new muscle. The fats, choosing the fats, we do want to choose mainly liquid fats, the mono and polyunsaturated fats. So things like olive oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, canola oil, those are all good sources of monounsaturated fats. Flax oil is also a good source of omega-3 fatty acids, which can be helpful for your immune system and as well. If you are trying to lose weight, making sure you don't take in too much fat can be helpful. It's when a fat has a lot more calories than either carbohydrates or protein. So it's important that you include some fat, but the higher fat foods would be the ones that you particularly want to pay attention to the portion size so that you're not overeating those portions. But if you're on the flip side, if you're trying to gain weight, the higher fat foods can be a great way to get a lot of calories in a small portion of food. So things like cheese and avocados and peanut butters and nut butters can be good ways to add some heart healthy fats and a good amount of calories, but in small portions. So you want to, on the flip side, limit the foods that are high in trans and saturated fats. So this includes things like lard or that marbleization and red meats and high-fat meats like sausages and hot dogs and those kinds of things. Fried foods and commercially made cookies and crackers and pastries can also have a lot of saturated fat. So the saturated fat is thought to promote inflammation, so that's one reason we want to try to avoid and limit it in the diet as much as possible. And so some other foods to try to limit are also the simple sugars, like especially added sugars. Things like table sugar, unfortunately maple syrup and honey also fall in these categories, agave, and then foods that are high in those types of sugars as well. Things like candies and cakes and regular sodas are also high in sugar, and those often provide what we call as empty calories. So calories without the benefit of important nutrients such as the vitamins and minerals and protein that we need for our overall health. And a lot of these foods too, not only the ones that have a lot of added sugars, but also the ones that are processed and have a lot of the added saturated fats, can also contain a lot of sodium, which can lead to fluid and water weight gain as well as high blood pressure in the long term. So if you've ever been told to watch the sodium in your diet, it can also, reducing the amount of processed foods in your diet can be a good way to do that. And so another way to kind of look at these nutrition guidelines is what we call the MyPlate. And MyPlate is kind of a visual representation of what your meals should look like in order to contain all the food groups and to contain that good variety of foods in your diet so that you get all the nutrients that you need. So some tips are about this. So we got fruits and vegetables should be about half of your meal, about half of your plate. And again, that provides that fiber, vitamins, and minerals. The grains and starches should be about a quarter of your plate. And again, aiming for the whole grains as much as possible. And protein should be about a quarter of your plate. And that could be chicken, beef, fish, pork, legumes, tofu, eggs as well would count in that category. And then this also contains a serving specifically for dairy or a high calcium food. If you find that dairy doesn't agree with you or doesn't make you feel great, using the plant-based milks can be a good substitute for that in order to keep the calcium in your diet. But just keep in mind that a lot of the plant-based substitutes, like the nut milks, like almond milk and cashew milk, don't have much protein in them. So if you're using those as a source of calcium, make sure you're also compensating for the lack of protein by including a different protein source in your meal. So some strategies or some ways to manage some common problems with that you might encounter with pulmonary disease. It's not too uncommon for folks to have a poor appetite from time to time. Some folks, this might occur because of medications or illnesses or just kind of feeling off or not feeling well. But even when that happens, it's important to try to stick to a regular meal and snack schedules. And your meals don't necessarily have to be big. They can just be, it's really better to have something that's along the size, along the lines of a snack size meal than to skip altogether. And so, using a small plate, serving yourself half a portion is totally fine. And that actually might be better to prevent yourself from feeling overwhelmed by eating a meal that's too big. And you may also find that taking a short walk before your meals can help increase your appetite a bit. And so also if you find that you're eating slow because it's difficult to breathe and eat, and your food gets cold and unappetizing, you can warm plates and mugs prior to putting the food in there. This is particularly helpful here in Vermont in the wintertime when our plates can often be cold if they're in the cupboard and your cupboard's along an exterior wall. You can just, if you're heating something up in the oven, just pop the plate in just for a minute, just to get it take the chill off, and that will help keep your food warmer and a bit more appetizing. But again, you can also try eating smaller meals and add some mini meals in there too. If you're feeling full quickly, the smaller meals and try eating more frequently can be helpful too, as well as drinking your liquids at the end of your meals, so that you fill your stomach up with the food first, and then your water or your beverage at the end of your meal. If you're feeling short of breath while you're eating, again, smaller meals and eating more often is one way to manage that, or drinking your liquids at the end of the meals as well. And if you're too tired to prepare and eat dinner later in the day, which often dinner is our biggest meal, so that can be, if you're skipping out on dinner, that could be problematic if you're not getting all your nutrients in. So some options for that is rest and preparing your rest before preparing your evening meal. So take a little afternoon rest so you have a little bit more energy. Use your crock pot so that you're doing your prep in the morning and then the food cooks all day and then it's ready at supper time in the evening. Or the other thing is to think about moving your main meal to be earlier in the day, so that you're having your main meal more so midday and then having a lighter meal that requires less prep more in the evening time. And this can be particularly helpful as well if you find that you have trouble with reflux later in the day. If you eat your smaller meal or eat your smaller meal in the evening and eat a larger meal midday, when you're more active, you may have fewer reflux symptoms. And so some ideas to get some quick snacks in when you're not up to eating big meals, doing things like even a half a sandwich or a whole sandwich, could be something simple with just cheese, or quick egg sandwich is good too. Toast with cheese or nut butter or hummus, peanut butter and crackers or fruit. And we got some snack bars there. There's a whole bunch of them on the market now, but these are some of the ones that are a little bit higher in protein. The Kind bars and Lara bars have nuts as their primary ingredient. Luna bar and Cliff bar, they are higher in protein, mainly from a soy protein, but a good source of protein. There's some healthier frozen meals on the market. Kashi and Healthy Choice are some examples. You can easily make a baked potato in the microwave by just popping it in, make sure you poke some holes in and pop it in the microwave for just a couple minutes. Crackers and cheese or nut butters is also a good snack. Fruit with granola and or yogurt and granola, or a yogurt smoothie. If you make also a yogurt dip and have with veggies. And then in a pinch, something like Ensure or Boost or Carnation Instant Breakfast is also a good snack. So while you've been doing this rehab program, you have been focused on changing and starting some habits, some new habits. And so there's also some similar strategies that you can use for changing some of your eating habits as well. So most of us do need to improve our diets at least by a little bit, if not by more. So in thinking about ways to improve our diets, we need to learn those new eating behaviors or habits and practice them over and over again. And then when we slip, we do need to restart. And we all know that changing any kind of habit is not easy. Why is this not? So here's what it boils down to. We're going to think about 1 or 2 food-related habits to focus on changing and practice those changes every day. And when you do slip up, don't beat yourself up. Just start over again at the next meal or the next day. And once you've gotten that new habit under your belt, pick out the next habit and keep rolling from there. And so some thoughts about some things to change. If there's things that you would like to do differently, think about your goal that you want to achieve, of behavior focus. So maybe it's perhaps eating a little bit more fruit every day, having a few more vegetables every day, and then also think about the steps you can take to get there. And here's some thoughts in our next few slides about some ideas. So if you tend to eat bigger portion sizes, just think about what you're serving yourself, because the bigger the portion that you serve, the more you tend to eat. So if you sit down with a whole box or a whole bag, you're going to eat more than you probably intended. So, be better to plate up a reasonable size portion, because as Yogi says, it's better to cut the pizza into 4 pieces because I'm not hungry enough to eat 6. So keep those portion sizes in check. And this is a little bit of a busy slide, but another thing to keep in mind is what we call the nutrient density of foods. So how many calories are in a particular portion or serving of foods. And if you need more calories, choosing foods that provide more calories in a smaller serving can be helpful. So things like cheese and nut butters and baked goods can be a good way to add more calories. But if you're looking at limiting calories in your meals, choosing foods that offer fewer calories in a visually larger servings can be a helpful way to fill up your plate so it's visually satisfying, and it also fills up your belly so that you get more satisfied that way. And just as an illustration, this muffin is 720 calories, as is all this food over here on the right. The pineapple, the melons, papayas, grapes, pears. So this food would probably last you several days, whereas this muffin would probably just be one meal. Beverages with calories are another thing to keep in mind too. If you do drink any sugar-sweetened beverages, even ones that sound healthier, you may think are healthier, things like lemonade or sports drinks, they're still really just sugar and water. And oftentimes the label is a little bit misleading. It may only be labeled for an 8-ounce portion, whereas the bottle contains 16 or 20 ounces, and chances are you're going to eat the whole thing or drink the whole thing and not stop at the 8-ounce serving. So just that's something to keep in mind. There is a time and a place for everything though for those beverages with calories. If your appetite is poor, some beverages can be an option to add nutrients, so smoothies with milk or yogurt, dairy or dairy alternatives, Carnation Instant Breakfast or Ovaltine, small servings, a 1-cup serving of 100% fruit juice, or supplements such as Boost or Ensure or Orgain, or there are many other on the market these days. So when you're working on creating new habits or changing your habits, it definitely can be helpful to have a log or journal so that you keep yourself accountable and are checking in from time to time and make sure you're meeting those goals that you set for yourself. Weight checks, if you're working on weight loss or weight gain or weight maintenance, is one thing to think about including. So, and these can be weekly. They could be daily, but I think weekly is a little bit better because you don't get those little daily fluctuations that can happen. But it's simple, cheap, and effective, and if you do find it's going in a direction you'd rather not have it go in, then you know you can make some adjustments in the short term to make some corrections. Food journaling, if you're focusing more on making diet changes, can be helpful as well. And it's one of the most effective tools that we have as far as changing diet. And it's because it's really a great way to become aware of what you're eating on an ongoing basis, and especially that mindless grazing that we kind of all snack on through the day. There are many different types of tools. There are some online tools, things like apps like MyFitnessPal and some others, or some people just use a notebook. Both methods are effective. Really, the most effective method is the one that you can stick with. And it does take some time and energy, but really they found in long term that it's what has one of the greatest payoffs as far as really changing behaviors long term. So as Scarlett says, tomorrow is another day. So you know, it's all about the progress and the willingness to keep on practicing, and in spite of the slips is the attitude to strive for. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to meeting you and answering any questions you may have.